Some of this is depending on how you want the paw to lay on the hide when it's all done. Some people don't want to leave the pads in at all. They just want the claws. Some people don't care. It is considerably more difficult and a lot more time consuming to keep the pads and then the paws and then the claws on the animal. But I like doing that. I think it looks a lot prettier. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to start at the front towards the head of the paw, and I'm going to make a cut kind of going distal towards the toes right here. You just got to tighten up a little bit more. And I'm just cutting through the hide. I'm going to cut underneath the pad. This is some pretty thick stuff here, so you don't want to miss. Feel like it's ready to tag the ulu out for a little bit and get a little smaller cutting tool. Now the foot bones, the paw bones, are still in this animal. Here's the base of what would essentially be the ulna and the radius right here. Cutting down along here. I'm going to come just about to the base of the toes. Now I'm going to start cutting all this away. Going to start cutting all the bones and the fat and the meat and the membrane and everything away. Starting on the palmar surface, or the bottom of the foot. There's the pad right there. Whoops. One little nick. And the pads are going to have a lot of fat up inside of them. You can see the fat is real similar to what I've been working with, but a lot thicker. So we're going to go ahead and just cut over it for now and then clean it out a little bit more when we're done. I'm going to start working around. Doing the same thing with my fingers again, raising them up, making a little raised elevated dome to cut against. All the different vessels and structures need to come out. Now I've got the other side of the bones, the muscular structure. If you do decide that you want to try to tan your own hide out, should you get a bear, or if you find a processing location that does bears, like any other animal, and you want to keep the hide, you have to tell them beforehand, as most processing plants that process domestic game or wild game are not very particular about how they flesh a hide. If you've ever seen any deer hides that are fleshed out with the intention of just taking them off real quick, there's all kinds of score marks and holes and punctures and things like that. That is a nightmare to work with. if you're wanting to turn it into a rug or a wall hanger or something like that. As I said, you got to play Dr. Frankenstein to fix everything later. So I would recommend that if you do harvest a bear and you want to keep the hide to do this with, whether you're going to do it or you're going to have it professionally done at a taxidermy shop, you make sure that they're very mindful how they clean the hide, how they take the hide off the animal. If not, you butcher it up pretty bad. So what I want is, when it's all said and done, I want the paw to sit like this. I want to keep the claws, just the claws on it, just the fingernails essentially. And I'm going to have the pad kind of rotate up like this, so I can get a nice flat surface to brain it out when it comes time to brain it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut the pad from the big pad, the interdigital pad, from the toe pads. This is where, if you're going to cut yourself, you're probably going to do it, so don't do it. Okay. Still trying to leave as much of the fat on the foot as possible, removing it from the hide, because ultimately it's stuff I'm going to have to remove before I brain the hide. Almost done. Now it's going to get tricky again here shortly. So I'm just about at the edge of the pad. A little bit more of the fat off. Okay, so we're going to start working on toe bones. Got the weight of the hide pulling a little more traction on it. I'm going to get my little knife. The anatomy of a bear is eerily similar to a human. As you will see here shortly, it's a lot like a human foot or hand. So almost at the digits, almost at the toe bones. There's one toe right there. So I'm going to cut down in to the cavity where the toes lie as far as I can without punching holes in it. There's a digit, 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 digit. Digit, digit, digit. You can see where my fingers are pushing through. Right there. So there's skin right there, and it's very, very, very thin, so I'm going to be very mindful not to punch a hole in it. I'm going to get traction pulled on it again. Just carefully start working around the bones, cutting all that connective tissue. Got something pulling tight right here. Now, if you do punch a hole here and there, especially in this part, you don't go into therapy about it. It's not that big a deal. And if you do, make sure that it's little and not big. All right, we're working on the underneath on the palmar surface now. Little bit at a time. Still just pulling off the hide. There's the tendons, how incredibly powerful these animals are. If you ever do flesh one out and you feel the muscular structure, then see how thick the tendons are. Tendons in their toes feel almost as big as your Achilles tendon in the back of your ankle. It's amazing. So you do want to remove all the bones, and if you've ever felt a bear claw before, all we're going to keep is the claw itself, where the first joint starts, which is essentially right there. In each one of these, right there, right there. We have to clean everything up into that point. If not, it's going to rot. So we want to remove all the bones with the exception of the tip where the claw is. So we're about as clean as we can be. There's the pad. That's where I'm at right there, which is just about at the edge of the pad. And we do want to keep the pads on this big bad boy. Want to get up and be able to get a little bit further up in. Notice I'm just kind of like a typewriter. I'm working, remember what a typewriter is, I'm working back and forth, removing a little bit at a time. Small increments of change. I think one of the tricks about this, other than being patient, is keeping it taut, keeping it relatively tight, and keeping that traction on it. And keeping your cutting tools relatively sharp. So there we go. I'm through this digit. Essentially, the separation between these two digits right here, I'm pretty much in a good spot. Right where about I want to be. There is one of the joints. You can see it. Let me cut it a little bit more. There's one of the joints right there. You can see it looks kind of like a chicken bone. Right there is the edge of one of the joints. There's the bone itself. There's one end and there's the other end. Right there is about where the bone is on the animal. We have a little bit more to go before we can start removing the claws intact in the hide. If you separate one on the end and then you go to the next one on the end, it gives you a little bit easier working space. So right there is the joint space I'm looking for. See that separation right there? That's the last bone I need to separate. So you can either do this with a cutting tool if you're comfortable wielding it, or you can do it with a pair of real sharp scissors. I'm pulling traction on it the whole time. Bang. So all I've got left is the claw, if you can see that. That is the base of the claw right there. Right there. Can't take much more off than that. I'm going to go back and clean that up with a really sharp pair of surgical scissors, but that's what I'm looking for. So now that I've got one off, pull traction on it again. This is not terribly difficult. I'll let you on in a little secret. You just have to be patient. You have to be patient with what you're doing, and you can't get in a hurry. You'll cut yourself, probably first, and then you'll hack the animal up, hack the hide up. Okay, we are about ready to separate the rest of the paw from the hide. Last little cut in that joint space. That's what the paw looks like. I mean, it doesn't look kind of like your thumb and 4 digits right there. Well, so we got that little guy. That's good in a stew pot. So this is what we got. That's essentially what it's looking like right there, with 2 pads and a digital pad. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 claws on it. Again, we're going to go back and clean the rest of that up, like the rest of that little bit of meat out of there, so it tans out good. So that's paw. I got 3 more to do, and then the rest of the fat.